It's been a great journey for us and a great success, but the most important thing is that we can bring the music that I loved as a child growing up into theatre. So hopefully the audience can get a little bit about how I felt.
Direct from the West End, Seven Drunken Nights, the story of the Dubliners, is making its way to Newcastle next month. Hoping to keep the music of the Dubliners alive, director and writer Jed Graham has created a show that goes deeper than a jukebox musical celebration and sheds light on this iconic band's journey. Here's the chat that we had with Jed ahead of the gig. I'd love to know how Seven Drunken Nights came about and what the inspiration was behind it.
Oh, certainly. Well, the Dubliners retired as their name as a group in 2012 after a career spanning 50 years. That was like an amazing career. Um, I've always been a Dubliners fan. My mum and dad, we emigrated from Dublin to England when I was 10 years old. And one of the few possessions that my dad brought with him was his Dubliners records. So they were a real kind of touch point for home, you know. So when we got settled in Manchester, in a great Irish community, I've got to say, I grew up with in a great big Irish community in Manchester where music and culture and sport was all, you know, very much at the forefront of our daily lives. And because we were from Dublin, we had a great affinity with the Dublin, sort of the Dubliners. So their music was always in the house. And I don't know what it's like this in Australia, but I know that growing up in the 60s and 70s, Sunday was the day that your mum and dad had access to the record player.
Oh, okay.
Kids and teenagers, you could play what you want during the week, but on a Sunday, mum and dad, that was their time for the record player. So they'd have their records on and they'd be singing away while they were cooking the dinner, and you know,
Yeah.
the Dubliners would be blaring out in the house. So that's a great memory of growing up, even into my teens, of that music. So when the Dubliners decided to retire in 2012, I'd been on the road for many years in Irish shows, touring the world, and I just thought, you know, it'd be a great shame for that music just to disappear, and
Mm.
for, you know, you could still listen to it, but to actually go and experience it live on the stage, and with the energy of the Dubliners when they were in the prime in the, you know, in the late 60s. So I set about writing a show that would bring that energy to life and bring the integrity of the music to life. And so what happens sometimes with Irish music is it gets diluted so much that it becomes a bit like wallpaper. It's kind of just there,
Yeah.
where I don't think the music deserves to be treated like that or listened to. It needs to be brought to life in the context of how it was first performed. So that was the challenge, but the great joy was to be able to sit down and just listen to all of these great albums, listen to the music while I started to bring all the little elements together. So it took me about 2 years in trying different formats, and you know, but what a great time doing it. You know, it's not really work for me. It's what I
Yeah.
do. And then we debuted the show in 2017, and from the first show right up until we were performing in Ireland 2 days ago.
Mm.
That we finished a UK and Ireland tour, 84 dates just 2 days ago, and a huge response. We played London's West End, we've done Dublin, we've done Scandinavia, Austria, Switzerland,
Mm.
Germany, Holland, and now over to Australia, and later on in the year over to Canada. So it's been a great journey for us and a great success. But the most important thing is that we can bring, what I'm trying to do is to bring the music that I loved as a child growing up into theatre. So hopefully the audience can get a little bit about how I felt, the excitement of how that was, to actually be able to listen to and touch the music, and just feel elated, you know, that
Mm.
the great songs, you know, the great songs, and great, you know, great character to the songs.
Yeah. And what do you think it is about the music of the Dubliners that connects with younger people
Yeah,
coming up?
I think it's just the honesty of the music. I think there's no airs and graces, there's no frills about it. It's just honest urban folk music.
Mm.
It's very accessible. It's got great sing-along choruses. It's got the majority of songs have got great storylines. They're either very funny,
Hmm.
very romantic, or the murder ballads, there's nothing better than a good murder ballad. And they kind of appeal to sort of a different side. It's not about babbling brooks and green fields and wonderful floating clouds. It's about, there was a woman and she lived in the woods and she murdered a child and then she got hung. And it's like, whoa, this is great.
Yeah.
But if you look at pictures of the Dubliners in their prime in 1967, and they could go on stage now in Glastonbury or any rock concert, and they would look as cool as
Yeah.
now. They were cool. They were cool in the 60s, and they were cool right away through the career. And I think when you're a young person, you just don't listen to music. You look for a culture or if you were a punk, you'd look for cool people who dress the same as you. You'd look for something that's got an identity that's a little bit different and a bit edgy. And they were definitely not pop music. It was something you could look at and feel and see that was very cool. And as a 16-year-old or 17-year-old, that's still applicable to the Dubliners. Just look at them.
Mm.
They look like a rock and roll band, they look great. And they sound great. And the music has not aged.
Mm.
It's still vibrant. And that's the great thing about folk music. It doesn't age. It's there to be discovered by generation after generation,
Yeah.
and then carried on. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's why young people like it. And the great thing about that is you can go to a concert, and certainly at the Seven Drunken Knights concerts, and there'll be people in the 20s and people in the 90s, and they're
Yeah.
both enjoying the music. So they're part of the same pop culture. They got a shared thing, and
That's
that's
powerful.
yeah, you couldn't say that about, say, rap music
Yeah.
or, indie music. It's either I like it or I don't.
Mm.
The crossover of the Dubliners music and Irish music there's no generational gap in it. And I think that's why it's sustained itself for so many years.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, before I let you go, I'd love to know, have you ever been to Australia before?
Never. This is my first journey to Australia, but yeah, I'm really excited about it. And it is the other side of the world for me. It is
Yeah.
like this furthest that I've ever been. I've got relatives in Australia, which I've never met, never seen. And there's a family story in our family going back. I think it was my great grandfather. He was in the British Army, and this is the time before there was an Irish Republic.
Yeah.
This is the time when I was part of England. And my great grandmother's sister was a chambermaid in the house that his father was a general, and he was a captain in the army, and she was a chambermaid. They fell in love.
Yeah.
Of course, in those days, that was so. It's like Downton Abbey times.
Yeah.
You've heard of that. It's like those times. It was like the chambermaid and the captain of the house. He They fell in love. They couldn't, they had to leave, so they sold up what they could, and they emigrated to Australia. They went
Wow.
over and yeah, and started a life there. And as far as I know, they were moved to the outback. That's all we heard in the family. They moved to the outback, and we had this vision of this like kangaroos jumping about everywhere, them living on a farm somewhere, a very romantic attitude. But yeah, and they had a big family, and then and then their sisters and their brothers then went to Australia as well. As what happens with immigration, and so I'm looking forward that hopefully at some point someone will turn up at a show and go, "I'm your distant cousin from
Yes.
50 years ago." That'd be fantastic. But I'm really looking forward to Australia. We've seen so many things. I've only ever seen films or read books or read newspapers, but to get there and to
Yeah.
see yeah, it's so big. I can't believe how big Australia is. We looked at our tour dates and we're going, "Oh, that's a big tour," and then we zoomed out of the map and go, "Hold on, it's only tiny."
Yeah.
You know, we're compared to the size of the country. So I'm looking forward to the vastness of the country. Looking forward to to meeting us, Australia. The only Australian people I ever met would be backpackers,
Yeah.
either in Dublin or in London. So I'm looking forward to going to Australia and just meeting people there. And it's a huge place. It's at one time America was the place where Irish people went to, but now it's Australia, and
Yeah.
so there's huge community. So what I'm hoping is that those Irish communities will come and see us, and then we can bring a little bit of home back to them for the few hours they spend with us.
Yes, that sounds brilliant. Well, look, I can't wait to see you here in Newcastle, Australia on the 1st of August at the City Hall. Thank you so much for spending some time with me.
Oh, thank you for having me on. I could talk forever about the Dubliners and Irish music, but thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure.